Have you been dreaming of writing a novel, but you don't know where to start? Or maybe you've tried writing, but you keep getting stuck halfway through a draft? If so, I have a free training you're going to love. It's called 3 Things You Need to Write Your Novel in 2025, and in this free 60-minute training, I'll share the exact same process my clients and students have used to go from idea to completed manuscript in just months, not years. You'll also learn why most writers never finish their drafts, and spoiler alert, it's not a lack of talent or good ideas, as well as how to overcome feelings of perfectionism, self-doubt, and overwhelm that stops many new writers in their tracks. You can register for this free training at savannahgilbo.com/masterclass. So one more time, that's savannahgilbo.com/masterclass to register for the free training. I hope to see you there.
For reviews, it's not honestly about you. The reviews are for other readers. They're not for you. And so when somebody is writing a review about your book, it actually isn't personal. It has nothing to do with you. It's them sharing their opinion with other readers so that those readers can make an educated decision about whether or not they want to pick up your book. And I think that oftentimes it feels personal because it is personal to us, right? Like we put our hearts and souls into these projects. But I think it's really important to remember that those aren't for you and they're not about you, because that boundary can really help you set some guidelines and boundaries for yourself around how you take in those reviews and like what purpose it's serving, because their purpose is not for you.
Welcome to the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast. My name is Savannah Gilbo, and I'm here to help you write a story that works. I want to prove to you that writing a novel doesn't have to be overwhelming. So each week, I'll bring you a brand new episode with simple, actionable, and step-by-step strategies that you can implement in your writing right away. So whether you're brand new to writing or more of a seasoned author looking to improve your craft, this podcast is for you. So pick up a pen and let's get started. I think it's probably true for most writers that getting your first book review can be both thrilling and terrifying all at once. And whether it's a glowing 5-star love letter or a brutal 1-star takedown, reader reviews can send even the most confident authors into an emotional tailspin. But here's what I've learned after working with hundreds of writers. Your relationship with reviews does not have to be a source of constant anxiety. In fact, with the right mindset and practical strategies, reviews can become a valuable part of your author journey rather than something you dread. I recently sat down with book coaches Emily Golden and Rachel May of Golden May Editing to explore this exact challenge. Between their own publishing experiences and years of guiding clients through getting reviews, they've witnessed the full spectrum of reactions, from authors who expected to handle criticism well but then crumbled, all the way to writers who feared the worst but discovered unexpected resilience. And in this episode, you're going to learn why reviews feel so much more intense than any other kind of feedback you'll get. You'll learn 5 essential mindset shifts that build emotional resilience. And you'll walk away with some practical strategies for both leveraging positive reviews and recovering from negative ones. So I won't make you wait any longer. Let's dive right into my conversation with Emily Golden and Rachel May of Golden May Editing.
We often will see writers start to worry about reviews before they even have their first draft of their first book done, right? Reviews are one of those things where it's like, if you want to put your book in the world, it's something that you know is coming down the road. And I think a lot of writers are fearful of that and scared of how that might affect them. And I think it can be a helpful thing to think about reviews and how to approach them before you're actually at the point where the reviews are coming in.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to help with today. And it's interesting because we could even zoom out and say, like, we feel this way about getting feedback in general sometimes, whether it's from beta readers, coaches, editors, or the review after our book is published. So there's kind of a lot that goes into the topic. And what I have found on my side is that some writers think that they're going to handle it really well and then surprised they don't, or they think this is going to kill me and then they're like totally fine. Do you guys see that as well?
Yeah.
So it's almost like you never really know how you're going to handle it until it happens, which is hard. But also, like, even if you're worried about it, doesn't mean you're going to handle it poorly, because you might surprise yourself. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, like, how do we go about preparing ourselves for this emotional journey of reviews? And maybe we can even talk about, like, why is it different getting feedback from beta readers versus a reviewer, and like when that happens?
Yeah, I think the emotion that you feel is similar, but it's a completely different situation. So in either way, you get the same sort of physiological response usually. It's one of the fear, fight, like one of the fear responses. I forget what they're called, but it's one of
fear, flight,
fawn, and there's another one now. Freeze. Yes. So you get triggered kind of in both scenarios, but they are really different. Feedback in a partnership scenario, in a writer to writer relationship, can feel really defensive. So again, we're getting that same feeling come out. But that's when you're like looking for feedback to implement, and you're looking for, how can I make this book stronger? Or what do you like about this book? Because positive feedback is still really, really valuable. And that is in the headspace of like, I want to change this book for better, like for a reason. And that could be through positive feedback or through negative feedback. That is feedback. But reviews are like, the book's done. I can't change it. I'm not going to change it. But someone's commenting on it, and it is wildly outside of my control. Like, I don't know that person. I don't trust that person. They can say whatever they want, not to my face. And that gives like a lot of reviewers some kind of permission to say things that can sometimes hurt. I mean, to be real. But that's not feedback. That's commentary. And usually, like, we have the same kind of response that we should be able to do something about it, that we should be able to like react to it and like, oh, I need to explain myself, or oh, I need to change something, or I need to do something. And in a feedback relationship that's built on trust and respect, there is action you can take. In a review situation, there's not. The book is done. And so it often can leave us feeling like even a little more helpless, a little more defenseless, because there's not much we can do about it.
Yeah, I also think it's really important to note that the purpose and the audience for, let's say, beta feedback and a review are very, very different, right? When you're sending your manuscript out to folks for feedback so that you can change your book, like the relationship, the communication is between you and them. They are giving you feedback. For reviews, it's not honestly about you. The reviews are for other readers. They're not for you. And so when somebody is writing a review about your book, it actually isn't personal. It has nothing to do with you. It's them sharing their opinion with other readers so that those readers can make an educated decision about whether or not they want to pick up your book. And I think that oftentimes it feels personal because it is personal to us, right? Like, we put our hearts and souls into these projects. But I think it's really important to remember that those aren't for you and they're not about you, because that boundary can really help you set some guidelines and boundaries for yourself around how you take in those reviews and like what purpose it's serving, because their purpose is not for you.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, that distinction of when you're in the beta feedback phase and you're getting the feedback, it serves a totally different purpose. Like you said, it's to make the story better. Usually you at least kind of know the people you're getting feedback from. You know that they might have similar goals if you're doing like critique partner swaps or things like that. And also you can ask them questions. You can say like, what did you mean by this potentially? Whereas a review, it's none of that, right? It's none of that. So you can't ask them for clarification. It's not even really meant, like you said, as a critique on you. It's just about your story. Is this going to get in the hands of readers? So I wanted to echo that because I think that's really helpful for listeners to hear, that they have two different purposes. It's not just about different times or different people. There are two different purposes.
Yeah.
So given that, let's pretend that we've gone through the beta feedback and we're publishing our book. How do we prepare to get potentially some negative reviews? Or actually, how do we prepare to even get reviews positive or negatively? Because getting any kind of review is scary.
Yeah.
I think there's a big challenge in being like perceived. So just like that psychological, oh my gosh, people are going to consume something that I've written. It really is nerve-wracking either way, positive or negative wise.
Yeah.
But I think what I have found personally helpful for my own reviews and then with working with clients is a couple things. I think it's really important to work on just your mindset in general, as far as like separating the work from identity. Like, this book is not you as a person. So when there are critiques about this book, or if there's positive praise about this book, it does not relate back to like how much you love yourself, right? Like the worth that you carry about yourself. It's not a critique about you as an author with your identity. So I think there's work to be done there to prepare yourself, but also to really dive into who is your ideal reader? Who is this book for? Because to me, like, those are the reviews that quite frankly matter. And like, reviews coming from people who are not my ideal reader, they don't matter. I didn't write this book for them. So knowing those, working on both sides of that equation of like, I'm writing this for a specific person, I know exactly who that is. Those reviews, I'm going to look at those, or I'm going to put, care into those reviews. But also my identity is not tied up into this project, this book. I am still like a valuable, worthy, loved human being, regardless of what anybody says about this book.
Yeah. And on that note, I have a funny real life story where, because we can use services like NetGalley and things that just open up our book to so many different people, and we can put tropes or genres or whatever we want on those labels and people ignore them. So in real life, one of the writers I work with, she put her sci-fi book out there, and someone who doesn't read sci-fi, doesn't like sci-fi, was like, I didn't like this book. And it's like, well, yeah, no kidding, you didn't like this book, right? So her mindset, luckily, was well protected by the things you said. She knew exactly who her book was for. She would have never anticipated pleasing this person in a million years, and she didn't. And it was like, cool, you're not my reader. So I think you're totally spot on.
Yeah, I had kind of a similar experience. My book was selected for the Amazon First Reads thing, which is fantastic and was great. But First Reads has a very broad audience. It's both like broad and also specific. Like these are people who read a lot of books. They're people who like to get free books, right? They're in the Amazon Prime sphere. A lot of their books are generally commercial. So there's like a certain kind of person. So my book was out there in this broad swath of people that it wasn't necessarily written for. So I ended up getting a lot of reviews where I had to kind of look and be like, okay, this wasn't, this person doesn't read historical, they don't read fantasy, or they don't like spice, so the book wasn't for them. And it's great that the book reached so many people, right? But like, then I had to kind of filter that through my reviews and be like, okay, that's going to bring in some people who are not going to be thrilled with what I wrote. And that's okay, because I didn't write it for them. And I think the other thing that I would add, like in terms of preparation, I think a lot of times when people are like, oh, I want to prepare, right? I want to prepare. I want to be prepared for my reviews. What they're really thinking is like, I want to have a suit of armor, right? Like, where's my suit of armor? How do I build my suit of armor? How do I protect myself so this doesn't hurt? And I think that one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself is just like acknowledge that it's going to hurt and like let that be okay. Because I think sometimes we can compound it by thinking, oh, I have to be okay, right? Like I have to find a way to be okay with, be strong, be okay with this, have a thick skin, right? And if I don't, then I'm like a weak, pathetic person who like fell for what I knew was coming, right? And that's just not true. Like it's very human to feel kind of sad when someone doesn't love a thing that you put your heart and soul into. And I do think that as much as we can try to use all the blockers and like prevent ourselves from seeing reviews, like it's eventually going to happen. And just acknowledging that like it might hurt and that's okay. And like you're going to get through it. And it's not a reflection of you as a person, the fact that they didn't like it or the fact that you got sad about it, right? Like that's just, you're just a human being. And so I think instead of being like, how can I protect myself from the hurt? Instead be like, okay, what methods do I have in place to move through the hurt, right? Like, what do you know works for you to settle your nervous system? Like, who can you turn to for comfort? Who are your cheerleaders who love your book, who you can be like, tell me all the reasons you love my book again? like have those tools in place so that instead of like surrounding yourself with a suit of armor that's not going to work, instead you have what you need to like move through those emotional times. Cause it's just hard.
Yeah. And something we talk about in my group and my courses a lot is look at the facts, not the feelings. And like, we're allowed to have whatever feelings we want. Your readers are allowed to have whatever feelings they want. But what can actually be proven in a court of law? And I don't know if this is me being like a Libra and I'm all about justice and whatever, but I always think like, can this be proven in a court of law? So this person didn't like your book and you felt sad about it. Does that mean that you're weak or like a bad writer or anything? No, it could not be proven in court, right? So it's like, let us feel the things. Like you said, we're human. And as long as you kind of can't prove it in court, it's like, okay, then what can I take from this? A, it's an experience that we all go through. B, is there any nugget of truth I can take from it or anything that is constructive that maybe I want to do something with? And if not, move on, But I have to ask you guys, I wasn't planning to ask you, but I'm sure listeners are like, ooh, you guys said you write books. Have you dealt with a negative review experience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Both of us have. Yeah. So I write Why Choose Mafia Romance, which for anyone who doesn't know, it's one girl with multiple romantic partners in like a polyamory situation. And then Mafia Romance is usually like violent. And so these books tend to be high octane, high spice, like there's lots of action. There's usually lots of spice.
Yeah.
And there are a couple negative reviews that I've gotten that have really stuck with me. But the one that always like comes to my mind is someone who left a poor review and then specifically commented on like the content of the book that was clearly in the content warnings, being like, I can't believe this book was so spicy. I can't believe this book was so violent. And it's like very clearly in the content warnings of what the book is. And so that one is like, I understand why this content upset you. You also chose to read it, like knowing that the content warning was there. And that to me is like, that's not my ideal reader. Yeah. So that one actually did hurt when I got it. And that hurt because it was, to me, it felt like so clearly, like, why would you leave a negative review for a book that you knew you wouldn't like when you started reading it?
Yeah. And then like they read it too.
They read the whole thing and then commented on like how many bad things were in it. And I was like, that's all funny. Of that was in the warnings. But anyway, like, yeah, that's going to happen. It's going to happen. That one really threw me for a loop because I was definitely like, why did you keep reading it? But I like screenshotted it and then immediately sent it to like Emily and a couple of my friends. And I was like, you got to help me with this one because I just can't wrap my brain around it. But I need someone to like talk me off a ledge that I'm not a bad person for writing books like this. Cause that was kind of like the content was like, how dare someone write something so spicy or something that had so many bad words in it? Yeah. You know, it was a little personal. So anyway, like I really leaned on my friends and I really leaned on like, this is not my ideal reader, but I still need to talk this out because it doesn't need to like affect me as a person. Like I'm a good person. I help lots of people. This content is just a book. You know, it just is a book. We can move on.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I bet there were so many other positive reviews on top of that negative one too.
Absolutely. And it just feels like you latch on to like the negative ones, but
totally.
There's absolutely been, and those positive ones still give you so many warm fuzzies, you know, like they really feel good.
What about you, Em? Was there any standout negatives?
Yeah, mine isn't like a specific one. I think mine was, so like I was saying, it went out, my book went out through First Reads, was just like this, they gave it out for free to people in like the month before it released. And I don't actually know how many people got it because I never actually got that data. But point being, a bunch of people got it. I didn't know how many people got it. And then like a few weeks later, there was just this like wave of reviews, right? And because it had been pushed out to this audience that wasn't necessarily my audience, right? All of a sudden I had people. So my book is not standard commercial in a couple of ways. First of all, my main character is not very likable. She's not a great person, but there's a reason for that. Like that's the point. And then second is it's dual timeline. And so that, you know, some people don't like that because it's confusing because you're flipping back and forth in time. And it had like a fair amount of politics. And so there were just like, I just got this like wave of reviews that were like, this woman is terrible. This book is confusing. I'm so bored. And it was just like one after the other for like a few days. And I was like, I'm going to lose my mind. And so I just blocked everything. I was like, this isn't, because I was trying to work on the sequel. And that's like one of the hard things nobody talks about is you're getting all these reviews while you're trying to write the next book. And you're like, am I going to live up to people's positive comments, right? Can I give them what they want for the next one? And like, is it even worth it because of all these negative reviews, right? So you have these like highs and lows. So I had to just block everything for a while. And then I would ask some friends to send me screenshots of the positive comments. And the positive comments were like, I love this main character. I love how human she is. I love how, you know, like the twists and the complexity, you know, and so those reviews were like, I get it. I get the story. Yeah. But it just was like the nature of how it got sent out, who it got sent out to, and like the timing of everything was just like this big wave of negative reviews all at once. And it was really intense. But yeah, I just blocked it. Just like, I'm not going to.
Valid.
It's so funny. I wanted to ask you that because I know listeners are like, these are book coaches and editors and they work with so many writers. And like, look, they still got negative reviews and they still had a hard time. But also, it's funny hearing you both talk about the reviews because what some readers really liked, though negative ones didn't like, and it goes back to your thing about writing for the right target audience and knowing who those people are. But also, it's funny because I had a writer I worked with who had a similar experience to you, Emily, where she was like, I cannot look anymore. Can you just send me the ones you think I need to see? And so I remember I was like having fun going through and screenshotting all the positives. But, you know, those are great ways of coping with the flood. And speaking of the flood, the same writer, she used an influencer tour. And I feel like the reviews that came from that were a lot more I don't want to say harsh or critical, but it was like they had a different sort of rating. Like they were less likely to give out 4 and 5 stars unless it was like the most perfect book that, so that was really hard for her too. So I think sometimes it's interesting going into these different things, whether it's NetGalley or Amazon First Reads or influencers or whatever. And it's like you have to kind of scope out the field a little bit and know that, yes, it's going to be a mixed bag. Also, we kind of know maybe the influencers and book reviewers are a little bit more judicial or like stingy, is that what I want to say, with the 5 stars. Have you seen that too?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I think the point you're making is that there's no like consistency to the rating system.
Yes.
So it's really hard when you get like a 3-star review and then someone is like, I love this book.
Right.
You're like, why'd you give it 3 stars?
Right.
I saw one today for a book that I just read this book this morning. It destroyed me. It broke me in 2. And I was looking at the reviews for it, and everyone was like, this book broke me in 2. And like 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And this woman was like 4 stars. She was like, I need the movie right now. And I was like, why 4 stars?
Yeah. Like it has nothing to do with the book quality.
Like, why? So I think that's something to be aware of when you go into it, is that you're going to have people who are like really, really serious about how they rate their books. And there are some people who have like a rubric. Yeah. And you're going to encounter those people that have a rubric. And there are some people who are like, 5 stars means that I will buy 5 copies of this book and never shut up about it. 4 stars means that I loved it. Yay. 3 stars, it was good. And then you're like, wait a second. My rating system for me personally, Rachel, is like, if I like the book, 5 stars.
Right.
I'm only ever giving 5
I never rate it if it's not 5 stars.
If it's not 5 stars, I'm not going to rate it. So I had to do like some calibrating with my own expectations of like what each of the stars mean.
Yeah.
Because number 1, it's not consistent. So how can you ever calibrate? Like you really can't. Yeah. But number 2, like I went into it thinking that people who really loved my book would give it 5 stars. And there are some people who really loved my book and like my series and give it 3 and 4 stars. And that's like still is okay. So yeah, I just feel like you have to be aware that people don't have consistency across these ratings, but that doesn't mean that like a 4-star is any less valuable. I had to do like work for me that like a 4 stars is still a really, really good review.
Really good. Yeah.
And so is a 3-star. Like 3 is great, Yeah.
It's a reminder that it's for them, right? It's for the reader. It's for them to remember how they liked a book. And so their rating system is for them. And the reviews that they put out are for the other readers out there. And that's so frustrating because it's not something that we can control.
Yeah. What is something that we can use, though, is like take away the stars. You can still use that really great review and like look at it and say, hey, this person loved this, this, and this. And, put it on your social media, do whatever you want with it. And you don't need to use the 3 stars if you don't want to. So I think there's a lot of ways to work around it. But I think the key word I've heard both of you say is just be aware that this could happen. Because for the writer I was talking about, I don't think she was aware. And how could she be? It was her first published book, right? But okay, so let's keep going on positive reviews because like you said, they don't get enough of our attention. They don't get enough weight. It's all about like, oh, we got this negative review and it hurts. But like we all get amazing reviews too. Every writer is going to get someone that loves their book. And what can we do with that?
Oh gosh, the first thing I would say is try to give it its weight. We don't do that enough, right? You read a great review and you're like, okay, great. Right. And then you read a terrible review and you're like, I'm devastated on the floor in a puddle. Like somebody come mop me up. Right. And like the reactions are not, they're not equal. So for me, like I have to remember sometimes to go. And if people don't know this, like you can actually sort your reviews like by star. So sometimes I'll just like go to Goodreads and just click on the 5 stars and I'll like read those reviews. And that way you're not seeing any of the other ones. Obviously you can still click on the other stars if you don't have it blocked. But that's something that I'll do. And I try to like reread them, right? Like multiple times and try to like actually believe that what the person is saying is true. Because I think our brains put this blocker up. Like we're afraid to accept that feedback might be true or real, especially if it's from our friends and family, right? So like really sitting with it, really, really hearing what they're saying and not letting it just like glaze by, I think is the first step because we give too much weight to the negative. And so try to pull that back.
Yeah. I just talked to someone yesterday who got like, it wasn't Kirkus review, but it was a similar thing. And they were like, I don't know if they really read it or if they, and they were downplaying the review. And I'm like, hold on, this is something you paid for, that someone literally read your book and like they're telling you they liked it and they're calling out specifics. How would they do that if it was fake?
Yeah.
So we totally downplay it and we totally discredit, but then the bad reviews mean the world.
Yes. Like we need to be rating the 5 stars, like just as heavy, just as valuable. Because they are. I mean, I feel like we are not conditioned to take the praise and feel really good about it. We're conditioned to downplay the praise and like highlight the criticisms.
And overthink it.
And overthink it. Worry about it.
This is tangential, but I also think it's important to remember that human nature drives us to share when we are unhappy versus when we are happy. So like more people will rate something because they don't like it and will comment on it because they don't like it than the people who do. So there's actually like, I think if you were to, somehow gather all the data of all the people who read a book, right? Like there's going to be a lot of people who really liked it who never even made it to the computer to rate it in the first place. And that's going to be outweighed. That's not really on the topic of positive reviews, but that has helped me in the past to be like, okay, I know there's people, right? There's people who read it on first reads that I don't know exist that never rated it, right? Like, and so, you just want to remember that.
I think a lot of times, like, no news is good news. I mean, I feel like I'm experiencing something very similar to what you're saying, Emily, right now, because I have a TikTok doing really, really well. And so, like, I can see how many people are reading it now compared to like 2 weeks ago. And it is like incredibly more people that I know are reading it now compared to like 2 weeks ago. And my reviews have only gone up like, boop, like a tiny little bit. And I'm like, you know what? If they hated it, I would see that. Because people are just going to tell me. They're just going to leave the comments. But because like I can see that people continue to read it in like my analytics, great. We're doing great, And I think like knowing that I'm still reaching people, even though I'm not seeing that reflected in my reviews, still is really valuable to me. It like still makes me feel good because you don't always see a correlation. Like you don't always see that because people are reading it, they are reviewing it. But that still means that you're touching people. You're still getting it out there.
And the opposite's kind of true too. Just because you don't see the reviews doesn't mean it's not reaching more and more people.
Right.
Exactly. Word of mouth is a thing. So I think that's all great to keep in mind. And something that I have found to be helpful is like keeping a folder on your desktop with your screenshots or on your phone or whatever. And when you're having a bad day or you get that one bad review, go back and just browse through your positive reviews. Or sometimes it's helpful too to like tell someone that's not in the book world, like read them your positive review. Like my partner, Nathan, sometimes I'll read things out loud and he'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe that's so nice, And it helps you feel it because when we read it or we share it with someone else in our world, sometimes it's like, oh, cool, great, Yeah. But someone totally outside will have a great reaction to it. And then you're like, oh, okay, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's really special because in this exact same vein, I don't think that we tend to highlight like the successes or the milestones. And my husband's always so good about doing that. Like I will say, oh, I reached this milestone in page reads or whatever, or in orders or whatever. And then like he'll buy me a cake.
Yeah.
And I'll just like walk out into the kitchen and like, there's a cake. And it's like, congrats. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, but I don't think we're vocal about it. Like it's, to me, I almost feel sometimes that if I'm vocal about it, I'm going to jinx it. I don't know if you guys feel that way.
Yeah. Or just like, who's going to care, Yeah.
I'm bragging or who's going to care or like it's going to jinx it. It's bad cart, like knock on wood. I don't want to talk about it. But like, no, like you can absolutely share it with your friends and family and like let them support you in like the positive pieces.
Yeah. And that goes back to having that network, like you said, of whether it's for a good review or a bad review or just putting yourself out there in general. It's important to have other people who go through it with you. So super important. Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of just change gears a little bit. Let's say that we're like, we think we've got our mindset right. The book's out in the world. Reviews are coming in. They're both positive and negative. I'm sure we need to practice self-care at this point, right? What do you suggest for this? How do we take care of ourselves as writers with our books out there that are getting reviews?
Oh, I feel like this is such a personal, like it's going to be such a personal answer because I think for a lot of people it's different. I've had clients who've just completely blocked Goodreads the week of launch because it was just too much, just too raw, right? For me, I tried to do that when it first came out, but I was too excited. Like I wanted to see how people were reacting to the book. And so, you know, it wasn't until a month or two later when that wave of reviews came in, I was, you know, kind of away from debut day that I was able to block it. So for me, I kind of had to be like, okay, I'm going to expose myself to this. So what that means is I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of other stuff done.
Yes.
Right. And so like clearing space to allow myself to go on that emotional journey because I chose to, right? Understanding that I didn't have to, I could have blocked it, but I wanted to go on that journey. And so not expecting too much of myself in other areas during that time was really helpful. And then like, you know, I've got all my like nervous system calming methods, yoga, walking, talking to friends, like the things that work for me, journaling. And I know everybody has a different set of those things. And so having those on hand.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know what? I think you just said something important too, is a lot of people assume that like launch week is going to be their busiest week, the week their book gets published. And I always advise people the opposite. I'm like, plan to do nothing except like the bare minimum that you have to do or any book related tasks you have to do, because you're going to be burnt out and tired and overwhelmed. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I think like it's an emotional drain for sure. And when I feel like emotional pressure, I tend to get really scattered. So I completely agree. It's really hard for me to focus on anything. I keep on picking up my phone. I keep like half starting. Like I can't do anything. But I also felt like what was interesting for me was like, it was also just another day.
Yeah.
You know, like it felt like, Emily and I talked about this. It kind of feels like your wedding day where like you spend all this time prepping, like any milestone. Like for me, it was our wedding day, but any day you like plan ahead for like graduation, you know, whatever. You plan for this, you like get ready for it, you prep for it, and then it's here and then it's over.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm married now. You know, like, okay, the book's out. So that was a little weird for me to be like, oh, it was just a day. Like it was a very special day. I was really tired. They had highs and lows, but then you just move on and like you just keep living. And I say that not to like despecialize it, but to like normalize a little bit of you can have whatever reaction to that day you want to have. Because one of my writing partners hates release day and hates the whole week coming to it and hates the whole week after it. It is just like so anxiety ridden and so pressure for her. And like she really struggles around release day. It's not a fun time for her, but like that's what she's got to experience. Like that's what she feels. So she knows it's coming. She will clear her schedule or she'll recognize like, maybe I need to hang out with some friends this week so we can just have a distraction.
Yeah.
So I don't have to think about it.
And on that note, I'm curious because you guys are both writers. What is your relationship like to getting feedback? Like through the writing process, and then because I'm hearing you both talk about what it's like getting the reviews. Is that the same or different than getting other kinds of feedback?
I think it makes me feel similarly, but it's totally different.
Yeah.
That's why I think everybody needs space to process. So like you got to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. But I only ask for feedback from people that I trust. And like, I don't trust my non-ideal reader reviews. Like, I don't trust my non-ideal readers. I don't. And like, I'm so grateful for all my readers, but some of them are not my people. That's okay. But like the people that I share my work with are my people and I deeply trust them. I still have like real reactions, you know, but I know myself pretty well. And I also know when like what phase I'm in the writing process, what kind of feedback that I want. So for example, right now I'm writing my third book and I'm not loving it. I'm not loving all parts of it. So when I'm asking for feedback, I'm only asking for positive feedback because I need tons of encouragement right now. I don't need a critical eye. I don't need like to know what the problems are. It's riddled with problems. Yeah. So all I want is like, tell me how much you love it and like how wonderful I am. And that's really,
so you can get to the end.
Yes, I can get to the end. So I can get to the end. So like with the phase that I'm at, I know that getting like critical feedback right now would cause a lot of emotions inside of me. And so I'm only asking for feedback that's going to motivate me right now. And that's incredibly helpful. And then when I get to the spot where I'm ready for other kinds of feedback, then I will ask for other kinds of feedback and it still will make me feel a certain way. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Emily?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I think so. In all of our sort of coaching programs in our community, our online community, we do a feedback training for folks for them to be eligible for our feedback partnerships. And that's one of the biggest things that we emphasize is like asking for the feedback that you want. And it's actually a skill, I think, to figure out what feedback you actually want. Because oftentimes we self-sabotage and we're like, I want to know all of it. I need all of it. I need all of it. Because if I don't have all of it, then something's going to, I'm going to miss something or everything's going to fall apart. And so, really emphasizing that, really thinking through like, what is the feedback that I actually want and need right now? What is the feedback that's actually going to help me move forward versus get stuck is, it's a feedback partnership. So it's a two-way communication street in my head versus, reviews is a totally different situation. So when feedback partnerships, for me, when I'm having trouble with the feedback that I'm getting, if I thought it was what I wanted, but it's actually not because it's starting to stall me, I'll say, please stop doing that.
Yeah.
I know it's not like it's what I asked for, but now I need you to not do it. And like being able to have that trust and that relationship with the people giving me feedback is very important to me, because if I don't trust that I can tell them that and they won't get like upset about it, then, that's not a good feedback relationship for me. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. So the reason I'm asking is because I hear that like you kind of compartmentalize a little in a good way, that getting feedback from my writing, I know myself what I need in the moment. And also I know the people, and it's meant to be constructive and helpful. And then over here, it's like I'm getting reviews and they're going to be a mixed bag. I'm still going to feel the things I felt. Maybe it's still scary to put yourself out there and get it, whether it's reviews or feedback. So I'm reiterating for the writers who are like, oh, maybe it'll be easier one way or the other. And it's like, maybe not, but there's tools and there's lenses you can look at things through that make the process easier. And you are both a great example of that. So super interesting. One thing that came up as you were talking is this idea of like working with, because you said sometimes you'll have to be like, hey, stop. I don't need this kind of feedback right now. Sometimes I've seen people who are working with like ARC readers, advanced readers, and they are afraid to say that, where they're like, afraid to say something like, don't tag me on social media if it's not super positive. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Okay. So ARC reading and all of that, to me at that point, the book is like finished outside of typos. So I will usually ask my ARC readers, if you notice any typos, tell me and I can fix it. But I'm not interested in anything else. So I set those boundaries up front. And then I do ask, like, if you have a negative review, don't tag me, but post it. I mean, I think that's really the biggest guideline, is that we don't want to, we shouldn't censor our readers. We shouldn't put stipulations around the review that they give you, but you are absolutely allowed to say, I don't want to see it. I don't need to see it. Please don't tag me in it. And I also think that most of the book community understands that is
like an unspoken rule.
It's like etiquette. I think that's pretty fair etiquette. There are people who do it, and like, that's not fun. It's not.
Don't do that.
Yes, don't do that. If you
don't tag authors in bad reviews. There's no reason to do that. It's not, it doesn't help anybody. But I do think it's important to note that it does happen. Right. And so that's why when I was like, it doesn't matter how thick your suit of armor is, right? Like, it's still, you're going to get smacked in the face with a tag and a bad review that you didn't want, didn't expect, and don't think that person should have tagged you in. And yet they did. And so like having the tools to walk through that emotion are really important, because you can't control that.
You cannot control
other people. We could.
Yes. And I think the other key word you said is boundaries and communicating, telling someone what you want. A lot of people will not. And then they're surprised. And it's like, well, it is a two-way street, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. Yes. I think authors are allowed to have that boundary. It doesn't matter like how much someone sings your praises. If they're going to put out something that like affects you in a certain way, you block them. That's okay. If that's what you want, you can always like take some time to process, unblock them. But I think if you're going to tag someone in something not positive, or they're going to see it, you don't have to see it.
Yeah. And I think that's where that boundary of reviews are not for you. Like, they are not about you. They are not for you. They're not for you to engage with, positive or negative, in my opinion, because that's the reader space, right? And we don't want them in our space. And so we should stay out of their space.
Yeah. And I think something on that note that's helpful to think about, and all of the listeners can do this little mindset exercise, is just like, think about yourself when you're leaving a review. Like, what is your intention? Is it to speak directly to the author, or is it to speak to other readers? Most of the time, it's probably going to be like, I love this book, or I felt this way. You should read it if you like or don't like this, Sometimes I think if we get out of our own heads, it can help change the relationship we have to reviews and feedback.
Yeah. And I think it's totally okay to engage in the positive. Like, if someone tags me in a positive review, I believe that they want me to see it. So I'm going to be like,
yes, that's fair.
Reading,
totally.
right? Like, thank you.
I'm not going to comment on Goodreads.
Right, exactly. I am
That's
not gonna
more what I mean. I'm not going to go in that space.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But I want people to know, like, I think I do, sometimes authors get really worried about how they can interact in the review space. And like, it's not your job to try to correct anybody. It's not your job to engage in a negative review. It's not, but again, they're not about you. But if you're engaging with a reader who loves your book, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. I love the my favorite thing about the author journey is the relationships that I've built with readers, with other writers. And so I love connecting with like people who love to read my books. That's always okay.
Yeah. And I mean, usually that's who your book was meant for. So talk about a win-win-win for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, all right. So we've talked about kind of mentally and emotionally preparing yourself and knowing that it's going to feel how it feels no matter what you do and how thick you think your skin is, and having that self-care and grace and compassion as you go through it. We've talked about some practical things you can do when you get positive and negative reviews. Is there anything else you two would like to add on this topic?
The only thing that's kind of been itching the back of my mind is, I'm sure this isn't everybody, but for me, I have a tendency to self-sabotage. So like, I did notice when I was having trouble drafting my sequel that I would be like in the middle of a scene, I'd be like struggling to write a scene, right? And I'd be like, this scene sucks. And then I would go look at my negative reviews for book one. And it was like, you know, how your fingers just do the little twitch thing. Like, instead of going to Instagram, all of a sudden I was in my 1-star reviews on Goodreads. Don't do that. And I, first of all, like look for the ways in which, because I've noticed that there are other people in my life who do this. When they're in a bad negative space, they go look for confirmation that they should be in that bad negative space.
Yeah.
And we do it subconsciously. And so I guess my tip would be to like look for any places where you're doing that. And I think we do it with feedback too, right? Like, for instance, let's say a writer is working on a project, it's their 0 draft, they're very excited about it, but they feel nervous about it. And they send it to people and they like don't specify what feedback they want because they're hoping that that person will be like, oh, this is amazing and perfect. Yeah. That's just asking to be taken, you know, like it's self-sabotage, in my opinion, to do things like that because you're like waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know, for that excitement to die or for somebody to tell you that you're on the wrong track or anything like that. So I think that feedback and reviews can be used in that way a lot of times, often, like I said, subconsciously. So just a tip to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I can do that too. I feel like I have that instinct almost, and maybe most of us do, but I feel like when I heard you say that, I'm like, ooh, if I were your coach, I'd be like, okay, you can do that. But then for every negative, look at a positive, you know, at least balance it out if you're going to go there.
Yeah. I just blocked it.
Yeah. Okay.
Not helping me get my draft done.
Speaking of drafting, last question for you guys. Do you use what's in the reviews to inform drafts? Is there anything you would advise in that realm? Or is it just like we want to be hands off?
That's tricky. I think for me, I tried not to do that for negative reviews, but I tried to do that for positive reviews. So the criticisms that I would see about the book, I would try really hard to not let that influence my decisions about the second book, because like I really wanted to learn how to, like, I wanted to trust in my own decisions. But when people are like, oh, I really loved the tension between these two characters, I loved, you know, their relationship, then I'd be like, me too, more, you know, like that's what I would take. I would take like the good stuff. Let me do more of that. The good stuff that people loved, like how could I capitalize on that? If they really wanted, you know, they can't wait to see these two characters again, let me give them what the people are asking for. Like that.
Give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want. But not necessarily to be like, oh, they complained about this thing, let me change it.
Yeah. Because that's one person's opinion.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I know better. I'm for real. I think the author knows better than like whatever negative reviews that they're saying. So I try not to let that influence the important story pieces, you know?
Yeah. So I feel like there's maybe a difference between my approach to the sequel and then my approach to a new series. Because I think for a sequel, right, if I had looked at all those negative reviews that were like, oh, it's too confusing and like, I don't like the timelines and this person is terrible. And I had like written, you know, because of those, I had changed my second book. It would have been a totally different book.
Yeah.
And that's like not
the positive reviews.
Yeah, 100%, because those people were there for the complexity and the morally grayness and all of that. So I don't think that it really impacted how I wrote the sequel. But I will say it's been interesting thinking about what I wanted to publish next and like what project I wanted to work on next and how I wanted to take what I had learned from the first two. And I think that the reviews kind of factored into that. And so just to kind of explain what I mean by that, for the positive reviews, it was really interesting to look at like where they all intersected. Right? Like, what do they like about what I do? Right? What do they like about the books that I write and my style and the way that I approach storytelling? And so looking through those actually helped me figure out like, what is my brand?
Yeah. That's
you know what I mean? Because it's like hard to look at yourself and like see what a lot of people are liking about your books. And so when you can kind of cross-reference those things, I think that can be helpful. And then from the negative side, some of that too, it's like, okay, well, if a lot of people found this complex, like it was too complex to follow, like how could I maybe simplify the world of my next book, or how could I maybe take some of that? But it wasn't like oh no, my book is terrible because it was too complex. Now I must do the most simplistic thing in the world, right? It's more of just like what direction do I want to take? Like I have readers now, right? I've got readers who love my work and readers who don't love my work. And how do I want to take that into consideration when I'm kind of continuing my writer journey on the next stories that I write?
Yeah. It sounds like your brain's looking at it almost like data, and you can do whatever you want with that data. So that's really cool. I like hearing about how you're looking at it for the series that the first book's in, as well as what you're going to do next. And I think you said a key word, which is patterns. Like you want to see, it's not just about one person's review, although I'll say it can be about one person's positive review. We can take that all we want, but it's about like, what are the things that multiple people found? And then what do you want to do with them? You don't have to do anything, but what do you want to do? So I think that's going to be super helpful for people to hear about.
I think the last thing I would say was that we've touched on community and we've touched on having other people that you trust, but reviews are a uniquely author thing.
Yeah.
And no one's going to get it more than another writer. Yeah. So when I leaned really heavily on that, and you process a lot when you get positive and negative reviews, and some of it is really challenging to process, the fact of oh my God, how could they say this? But also there are sometimes people who comment on your books that don't know anything about what they're commenting on, and they're trying to leave a really smart review. And you're like, wait a second, am I crazy here? So I just think that having a support system you can trust, that you can talk to, is invaluable for all parts of the author journey, but authors get it. And this is not something I would necessarily talk in depth with or process in depth with a reader, even though they're a really close friend, or I've made a lot of really close friends. They don't understand what it's like to be an author. So I do think sometimes you'll have to even draw boundaries and who do you process this with? Because there are people who are going to get it, and there are people who don't have a shared experience, and so they don't fully understand.
Yeah. And especially if you're someone who's a little sensitive to the idea of getting feedback, as you were saying that, I'm thinking of all the free groups on Facebook, and it's yes, they might be full of authors or writers, but that's still a dangerous zone because not all of them have published, and some might be jealous of what you've done, and that might color their feedback. So you do have to be really specific and careful about who you're including in that circle of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know you have a great community, so I will link to that in the show notes, as well as all the places we can find you around the internet. But thank you both so much for being here today, and we will definitely have to have you back in the future.
Thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you.
All right, so that's it for this episode of the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast. Head over to savannahgilbo.com/podcast for the complete show notes, including the resources I mentioned today, as well as bonus materials to help you implement what you've learned. And if you're ready to get more personalized guidance for your specific writing stage, whether you're just starting out, stuck somewhere in the middle of a draft, drowning in revisions, or getting ready to publish, take my free 30-second quiz at savannahgilbo.com/quiz. You'll get a customized podcast playlist that'll meet you right where you're at and help you get to your next big milestone. Last but not least, make sure to follow this podcast in your podcast player of choice, because I'll be back next week with another episode full of actionable tips, tools, and strategies to help you become a better writer. Until then, happy writing.